Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bonus Points podcast. I'm Joe Garrett, as always being joined by Ollie. Oi, oi, Ollie.
Oi. How has that become a thing? I saw people commenting about that.
That's what I even made a note of it to remind me to say it. I said oi, oi, Ollie in the last episode, where we both oi, oi'd each other.
Did we?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realise. Okay,
and people really enjoyed it, so expect lots of oi, oi's in the future.
Yeah, I suppose so.
It's quite a good oi, oi, Ollie. It's quite a nice.
I know.
Sounds like a football chant.
Yeah, isn't it actually the start of like quite a rude chant about my name?
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Old UK people will know.
Yeah.
Remember that.
Yeah. I'm innocent and naive, and I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, I know what we're going to be talking about in this podcast, though, and that is a video game which I selected to do on the podcast, and it is Halibut.
Halibut. I have the Wikipedia entry. Should we just start with that?
Let's go in.
So, Halibut is a 2024 video game developed by German independent developer Slowbros for Windows, Xbox Series, and PlayStation 5. The game is a narrative-based adventure video game, weird sentence, in which players control Harold, a janitor on a spacecraft submerged on an alien planet, and complete odd tasks for the ship's inhabitants. The game was created over a 10-year development process, first conceived as an unfunded part-time project to create a narrative game inspired by stop-motion animation.
Yeah, so after like kind of that description, which sometimes is a little bit abstract and hard, it's a little bit hard to like think about what exact game we're doing. So obviously, if you're watching the video version, you can see footage, so you're kind of instantly realizing kind of what is kind of unique and immediately special about this game. But I guess we should probably start with the production and just the visuals of this game, because that is the thing that kind of immediately drew me to it, and I think a lot of other people as well.
Yeah, same. So from looking at it, you might be like, oh, this looks like little models. This looks like it's been made out of clay. That's because it has. Everything in the game has been made by hand and then scanned in. So the game originally was meant to be stop motion like Wallace and Gromit or like any of the Aardman films, but I'm not too sure exactly what happened. Probably that it didn't really work and it was quite a long process. They ended up just scanning in the models that they made.
Just scanning in.
Just scanning in. Just scanning them in. Okay, they ended up scanning them in and then basically still being inspired by stop motion, but not. But I've got the full OY6NC on YouTube has given us a full rundown of how they've done it, if you'd like to hear that.
Yeah, let's go straight into that.
Okay, so the team got the idea for the game in 2010, inspired by the old Aardman films, and started by attempting to animate each character and environment in the game by hand using traditional stop motion. They soon realised this was too time-consuming. What are we doing?
What was the developer called again?
Yeah, it's Slowbros.
Slowbros. Oh, lazy bros, more.
And resulted in a flat and unnatural look. In 2013, they switched to a 3D scanning model. They used a regular DSLR camera and a turntable to capture images of their handmade objects, each one needing 200 to 500 images to accurately digitize. A lot of manual cleanup on the computer is then done before putting these environments into the game, and the characters were animated using motion capture. So did you see the initial, I mean, obviously we're not going to show it here, but did you see the initial stop motion over the backgrounds? From the...
Yeah.
Didn't look great, did it?
No, I mean, but it was
unknown. It was like a new thing, but I could see why they might have steered away from it.
And that was like the unfinished version. Like, I bet if you saw like the early version of how they ended up doing it for the game, it would have probably looked rough, just because that, you know, like a lot of it gets kind of polished towards the end. I did actually see that was interesting. There was a talk they did, I think it was at some like Unity event. There's a lot of Unity branding all over the place. The game was made in Unity, if you didn't know. So at that talk, they were kind of talking about how they're doing it, but this was like about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But it looked like very similar to how it ended up being. So they obviously did a lot of those sets quite early on. But in that, they had it so they had scanned in the models, but then they were like animating them more traditionally, like you'd think a video game. So their mouths were actually kind of moving like you would expect, you know, like Mass Effect or something, you know, like it's kind of just going along with kind of the barks that like the characters are making. Whereas in the actual game, they kind of, I'm going to say simplifying it. Maybe it was harder to do, but they kind of made it closer to what you'd expect for stop motion, where their mouth is kind of much more of almost like a puppet, just got there's a few expressions.
It has 5 expressions and it kind of flips between them and that's kind of it. But I think it looks great.
I think it looks better than that version, and it sticks closer to kind of that stop motion aesthetic that the game's going for.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it looks amazing. That's probably the best. The best thing about the game is the fact that it looks unbelievable, and it's still impressive to look at. Even how do you do spoilers on this, by the way? Just because it's new and it's just pretty much a story. There's not really much else to it. So
Yeah, I think we have to spoil it. I think if you have any interest from what you've seen or heard of this game so far, like it is on Game Pass, like I would recommend you go and play it and then come back here because, as Ollie said, this is a story-based game. If we try and talk about it without spoiling, there's not that much we can talk about. Yeah, so this is earlier than normal. This is full spoiler doors are open, so be careful.
yeah. Also, it's about 7 hours, so it doesn't take very long to finish.
Yeah, we'll wait.
Yeah, we'll be here when you come back.
There's a 7-hour gap in the podcast. You done? You done? They all died, didn't they? I can't believe they all died.
Cool, I hope they clicked off.
Sorry, you were making a point a bit ago before all of that.
I can't remember what I was saying now. You distracted me with your screaming, everyone dying.
So
Oh, it's still impressive to look at. There's a part where the camera swings down and you walk through an alien tunnel, like through an alien planet.
Oh, on like third person. Yeah.
And even does that at the end of the game, the same angle every time you walk through it. And even you've done it for like the 15th time, it's still like, it still looks amazing.
Yeah.
Still looks really, really good. So yeah, good on him. Like, I think I would. Do you think anyone else would ever do this again? Or do you think this is their thing now?
I think they have proven that it's doable.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's not like easy. Because you can imagine me like, oh, I need to make a texture for a thing. In a way, you think like, oh, if I just need to like paint a bit of wood and take a picture of it, I've already got like a really good, like, you know, like the real world that made the wood rather than me having to draw it. So in a way, like I wouldn't say it seems easier, but it might seem easier than it ended up being. Mm-hmm. But what they were talking about is the problem is they would end up with these really detailed scans. Like say if you're doing a character and you're taking a picture of its face, like you have a really detailed version. So if you put that straight into the engine and it was like producing polygons out of them, it's just like way too much than what a console could handle. So they're kind of having to go by hand and almost model the 3D version over the pictures.
Yeah.
So maybe in the future when like hardware limitations aren't like so much of a thing and things are super powerful, maybe it would then be easier. But they were like, for some stuff, they did an automated process, like things in like the distant background, like outside of the ship, if there's like buildings and stuff, they let it do the auto version there because it's fine. It didn't matter if it looked ugly. But everything else, they had to go by hand and put polygons over all of these pictures. And it seems like that was kind of the time-consuming part. Wasn't the building the sets in real life. It was converting the real-life version to a 3D virtual world that the players can explore.
Yeah, and I heard that they did them as 3D models because they were like, no one's very good at drawing. Because they were originally going to do a drawn game. So they were like, "Oh, actually, we're quite good at sculpting, so let's stick with that." That was in the behind the scenes.
Oh, I think I missed that bit.
Yeah, but no, it looks great. Good on them for doing all that work.
And it's just so nice because you can see like all of the like inverted commas like flaws. Like you can see when they like painted over the lines or it doesn't quite match up. There's even like one corridor which is meant to be a really long corridor with doors. And you can see there's a 3D model for a bit, but at the back, they just painted the corridor going for longer.
They did.
Like there's like a few little things like that, which are really nice touches. And because this is a game which is mostly spent either slowly walking around or talking to people in, like you have a lot of downtime spent like to look at the sets. So the fact that the sets are so visually interesting, like is kind of crucial. I think, for this game.
They've obviously paid attention to how everything's framed as well. Like you can really, it could be a film. Like the way stuff's. If you ever watched a Wes Anderson film, it's like this is very similar. Like there's one. My favorite location in the game is actually the train station, and the way the whole location is in that one screen, but it's still close enough that you can see what you're doing. And there's like the little moon thing or something at the top that's kind of moving on its own. It's people laying around like as if it is a real train station. I mean, it's a tube station in the game. But yeah, that was, it's just astounding looking.
Yeah.
But as you just said, you spend a lot of time running around talking to people. Do you want to explain what you actually do in this game?
Yeah, you spend a lot of time running around talking to people. Did I mention that? So basically, like when I first saw the first bit of this trailer and they said we're making an adventure game, my head immediately goes to kind of like point and click adventure game, like kind of old school LucasArts or kind of Telltale, or even like the old King's Quest games where you're going around and you're picking up items and interacting them and solving puzzles, which those that have been listening to the podcast for a while will know I'm a really big fan of those sorts of games. And so a lot of my early interest was in not even just the visual style, but also just like the tone, just seeing the characters. I was like, yeah, this is a weird indie cool game. Like, this is interesting to me. And it's a point-and-click adventure game, so my hype levels were like super sky high. But I did hear before playing the game that, oh, really, there's actually not that much interacting with the world.
Yeah.
Like, it's mostly going around talking to people. And so I had heard that before I started playing. So I had my expectations in check that this is what the game is going to be about.
Yeah.
So it didn't take me off guard that this is mostly a purely narrative-driven game with very... I would even not say... I would say there's not even really a single puzzle. There's
I would say,
moments.
if you watched our episode on Frog Detective or if you played it, that is the same level, I'd say. Almost very, very close to being the same level of interactivity where it's like...
You ride a scooter in Frog Detective.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you do fly a ship in it at one point.
That's true.
But yeah, you speak to people in an order. That's the game.
Yeah.
That is the game. There's also like a few mini games, very, very, very lightly said mini games, very small, like unscrewing things.
Yeah.
Is one of them.
There's that one where...
or pressing buttons on a computer.
There's that conveyor belt, and it's like, you got to stop the element, and now you got to cut it up, and it's like, they make you do that way too many times.
And you have to do it on their command. If you cut the element straight away, they're like, you didn't wait. And then you have to walk back to the other machine, turn it on again, walk back across, and then get going again. Like, the opening... Okay, so let's just put it out there. I've actually liked this game quite a lot, in the end. But the opening first half, or maybe third, is like brutal in how slow it is. It's like so difficult to hold my attention. Like I'm not someone who reaches for my phone really ever, like films, TV, games. This game, I was like getting my phone out.
You were watching it through your phone. You had the camera app up, and you were like, I gotta.
It looks amazing. I've got to take bits of it. Warren's not going to believe where I've been.
You're there doing like selfie cam mode a bit in the background. Like...
But it's just like, I was just like, could not pay attention to anything because it was so slow. And Harold, he's very kind, and I like him for that. But he is also very slow in every way. And the way people speak to him is kind of rude and off-putting. And it was a bit like, this is like really, really putting me off and making me be like, why did we do this game? But then this, from about a third of the way and about halfway in, it like really ramps up. I think from when Wii appears on the ship, who's an alien, that's when things kind of start to kick off. And from then on, I was like, this is actually really good. Oh, my bad.
Yeah, like I know I never found it like as excruciatingly slow because obviously at the beginning, like they grow. So to set up a bit of the story, I know you kind of briefly mentioned it earlier in the Wikipedia, but people have already forgotten that by now. But the general idea is that there was, during the Cold War in the 70s, there was this ship called the Fedora that basically left the Earth because the Earth's all going to get blown up by nukes. And so they got to look for a new home planet, and they went through space for ages. Eventually, they landed on this planet, which had no land. So they're now underwater. So it's quite a unique location. And at the beginning, it's quite split off, and it's quite restricted for where you can go. And so I enjoyed the opening because it's gradually introducing new characters and areas of the Fedora. And I think that kept up in a pace that I was never bored. If it was just me in like one area, the same characters, but it would be constantly being like, oh, now you can go to like the arcade, or now you can go to the social district, or like the energy like district or whatever. Like, and so you're constantly meeting new characters and going to new places. I think for that reason, it held my attention. And I was also like, it was when I was most in awe by the visuals because it was so new.
I mean, it looks so
good. I think that
good.
helped a lot.
I think the actual gameplay part of what you're describing is like, hey, my friend Cyrus is in the plant room. Can you go and give him a message? And then like you'll run down there, and then you'll tell him, and he'll be like, I didn't need to know that. And then you're like, what am I doing? Like, why is this happening? And then he'll be like, can you give this message back to Moreau? Tell her it is what it is, or something. And then you go back and tell her. And he's like, I don't really know what that means. And she doesn't even tell you. So it's like, what are we doing? And then the way people speak to Harold is like, he's obviously very kind. And I really like that about him. But he is so stupid. And like, he's like quite frustrating to play as. He does have his character arc, which in the end I really liked. It just takes him a long time to get there. So for example, you have characters talking and they were like, oh, we need to figure out a real life solution to this alien problem. And then they'll all figure it out. And then Harold will be like, oh, I know what we should do, and just say what they've said. And it's like, mate, they've already figured it out. Like, you're too late. And I know that's his whole thing. And I don't know if that made him much fun to play as until he started to really get his own.
It made him quite unique for a video game protagonist, because kind of one of like his kind of main character points is he's just not like great at everything. Like there's even a bit where like there's this kind of mission and all these things that they're doing, and he's like, I want to help, but like I'm not the scientist, I'm not the engineer, I'm not like the creative, like artistic person. And so he's sort of like, oh, like I'm trying to help, and like I did this, I guess. And they're like, oh, that's good that you're helping. And he goes, yeah, but anyone else could do what I do, but I couldn't do what they do. And I think that's quite an interesting perspective and probably quite relatable for a lot of people that don't have many talents.
That is great. That's a great part, but that is about hour 7 of 8.
But it needs
like,
to.
I know it needs to build up, but
I
think the start is like it's like painful.
It is slow. It is slow. It's slow, but I enjoyed. So some of those examples you said I agree with, but are like, wait, what? Like record scratch? So I'm like, wait, what? That was the mission. But like when you first get to the arcade and you meet there's like the character Slippy, who's a really interesting character, and then you go to like in the actual video game arcade and you kind of like get to play in the games there and speak to people, and then you first go to the energy district. Like I feel like there was I was never bored by it. Yeah. But I guess I think people, especially today, just have different like acceptance for that sort of pace. And I think that maybe I was so like enjoying being in that world, and I enjoyed there's something I've said before on the podcast is I love it when you get to know a place really well and you spend a lot of time there, and they're like, oh, you got to go to speak to this person, and I'm not following a waypoint, I'm not looking at a map because there isn't one. I'm like, oh no, this is my home. Like I live here. Like I know where to go. And then it will be like these boring errands. It's kind of satisfying, like living the life in this ship and kind of almost role playing as Harold a little bit. Yeah,
you're completely right. You are role playing as Harold on the ship, but you are role playing as a man who is designed to have like a pathetic existence, which is what was a bit of, it wasn't like, it was slow and it was kind of bumming me out. But I mean, that section is the opening couple of hours and then it really ramps up after that.
Okay.
Well, I can see a lot of people might be turned off by this. So basically I read a few reviews of the game after I finished it because I remembered it didn't get great reviews, but by the end of it, I was like, oh my God, that was so poignant and amazing. And basically mixed reviews for due to it being too slow or too long. And also I saw 2 different outlets describe Harold as a village idiot. Like 2 separate websites were like, yeah, he's the village idiot.
You know when it's like the meme about like it makes you really feel like Batman? It's like, it really makes you feel like village idiot. Like,
but yeah, you're generally running around, running errands. But I think that the game has a lot of moments, and really the running around is just between the moments. Like it has considering the length of the game, it has a lot of moments crammed in that are like real like fist pumping, or you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. It's really great. And like moments of Harold's reflection where like there's a section in it where another character dies and they're giving him I don't know what's called, like a eulogy at his funeral. And kind of what they're describing of the guy who's died is they're basically describing Harold. And it's like he's watching his own funeral almost. They're like, you know, he was always in good spirits and he'd always run between the different wings of the base and, you know, help people out and deliver things. I was literally like, oh man, this guy's like watching himself, his own funeral almost, which was like such high concept, because when I think back to the start, like, where we went with that, and like the music drops were really good. There was a part reasonably near the beginning actually when Harold enters the filtration tank and starts singing.
Yes.
And I was like, this is actually amazing. Like I didn't expect it at all, because that's the first thing that kind of happens that's out of running up and down this one corridor. You only have access to one corridor really to start. You have one corridor, like one tube stop, and you just basically go back and forth along that. But when he started singing and he sings about how his life could be something more, I was like, man, I feel for you right now.
Yeah. And that was one of the first bits, because he is quite a straight character. That was one of the first kind of like glimpses behind the curtain of kind of some of his other character traits that don't surface when he's talking to other people. It's sort of like when he's on his own, he kind of like he would never sing in front of someone else. Like you tell, like he's not, but that doesn't mean he doesn't like to sing.
Yeah. He also has a few interesting quirks, doesn't he? Like when he has to do something he doesn't want to do, he becomes Agent Harrelson, and I was like, kind of, sympathizing with him a little bit, because he's the only person that can, clean filters and crawl around in vents, and people trust him with things because he's so nice, and he's like, oh, this must be a job for Agent Harrelson rather than Harold Halibut, which I kind of vibe with that.
It's pretty like speak about his personality and kind of what he's like, kind of almost like in some ways a little bit boring is the way it's presented, at least at the beginning. There's this bit where he mentions that he's in his 20s.
Oh yeah.
And everyone's like, wait, you're in your 20s? Like, yeah, what do you mean? Well, why wouldn't I be in my 20s? It's just like the way he dresses and acts. It's sort of like he seems so much older. Like, I think that was actually like the funniest moment where I was just like, oh, you're in your 20s? Really, Harold?
Did you find a lot of the jokes were just like, I kind of would realise they were jokes like 2 lines later?
Yeah, the humors are like, there was one bit that like, then when they do like the Spinal Tap reference, that like it goes up to 11.
Oh yeah, and it's like really forced, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was like, God, that was such a swing and they spent too long, like, because they did like this, and it was sort of like, it could just be it goes to 11, but then they do like the next 2 lines as well from the film, and like it's sort of, so there are the writing, I think, and I think the voice acting is a little bit inconsistent.
Yes.
Like from like some very high highs and some low lows. I think almost per character. Like there's maybe it might be preference, but there's some that I thought were much better than others. I don't know about you. Were there any that you stood out either way?
Well, I liked Chris. He was the teacher. He was really good. Interesting character, funny. Obviously interesting to look at. He's like one of the only ones that isn't the same like shape as everyone else.
He's like enormous. Like go around in like a robe.
Yeah, and I don't know if I didn't like Moreau's voice lines or if I didn't like how she spoke to Harold.
So Monroe, I don't think it was a great voice acting performance. So I actually thought she was evil. Like there was a few times where I thought like they were setting up. So there's this company that's kind of running basically the whole ship called All Water. And I was like, they're going to be evil. Or like, no, they're making me think that they're evil, but actually Monroe is evil. Like there's a few times when like, you kind of mentioned this alien shows up and she's sort of like, I just need to get a few samples. I was like, oh, like what's she do? Like I really thought that they were, but it turns out, no, she was being straight, but she was, it was.
She's not very nice to Harold either. Like there's a part where he really takes an interest in her because she's a scientist. And he's meant to be a lab assistant, but I mean, he sleeps in the basement. He sleeps in the bed underneath the lab. He doesn't even go to the residential area. He sleeps underneath the lab. And then he's like, oh, so like, I can't remember, it's some science thing, but he's like, oh, so because ABC, that must mean X, Y, Z. And she's literally like, can you be quiet? And it's like, just give the guy a chance, man. Like, he's trying.
But I think just for the voice act, like, it's like, it sounded like she was reading lines. It never felt like a natural back and forth conversation with her. And she's one of the people that you speak to much. Like compared to like one of the other characters, like Sonny, who's like his ex, which was very natural. And then even I also really liked Rafi, who's the person who works in the arcade. And I thought they were a really interesting character who just like wants nothing to do with anyone else, just wants to listen to their music, and is like they work in an arcade and they get annoyed when like kids come in. Like it's sort of like I really liked conversations with those. But Monroe, and then I think Cyrus as well, like were 2 kind of the main characters. Like there was just never that many interesting interactions with either of those characters.
No, and a lot of the voice script, a lot of it is very meandering around, and like you'll kind of see where they're going 4 or 5 lines before they get there. You're kind of just waiting for them to say it. I did actually have a bug in my game whereabouts was it? It was near the end, basically when they confront the CEO about the time stealing thing. And I had a bug where all the voice lines played at once.
Oh, really?
And you know what? I was like, oh, thank God. Because they were flashing up, the subtitles were flashing up quick enough for me to read them. Okay. But I didn't have to listen to the whole conversation. And I was like, oh, good. Like, because some of them can be really long.
You want to play the game on like ×2 speed, like a YouTube video.
Well, it wasn't even ×2 speed. It was just like all the voice lines came out at once. But actually, one other character I do want to shout out, and also it was a really amazing moment, which sounds so small and insignificant, but Bridget, who is one of the energy scientists, she invites you out for dinner. And Harold asks, what's the difference between being wise and being clever? And she's like, oh, being wise is knowing that you don't know everything as well as being kind. And like they have this conversation about it, and as they do, like the camera's like pulling away.
Yeah,
and
they do that a few times.
Like, I was like, this is so good, man. This is so good.
There was that first moment once again in the filtration tank, which for those that aren't watching the video version, it sounds like a really ugly place, but it's like
it looks like a stage. It's got like lights on the front of it, like a stage. And like steps.
I think they nailed that set and the way the green light comes in and stuff. But it was when so Wii is the alien / fish character, which kind of comes in about a third of the game of the way through. Basically finds it and the music playing, and then like he's there like cleaning, and then you just see like this sort of like humanoid shape. And like with the video version, I only got the end of it because I was playing not recording, and I was like, I gotta record this. I had to pause it quickly, like set up my Elgato and start recording. I was like, this like moment's so beautiful. I gotta I know I'm gonna mention it on the podcast. I gotta have footage of it. And then that kind of sparks when the story kind of ramps up, and really you learn what the story's gonna be about. Is basically fish, human-shaped fish arrives, but is unconscious and is ill. And Harold is trying to kind of basically stop them from dying, and that kind of becomes your mission for a good couple hours of gameplay, is basically trying to work out what's going on, keep it secret, and try and resuscitate them.
And he's also building his own. He's starting to come into himself a bit because he talks to the fish because it's like laying on a hospital bed, but he's like talking to it as if it's awake, and you can see him kind of coming into himself. As a part where he talks about his ex-girlfriend, and he's like, I wish you would stop asking me so many questions, so I don't want to tell her what I'm doing. And it's like that's like the first moment really where he's not just being an absolute doormat, and is like standing up for himself. And that just builds through the game where you see him starting to make more and more choices for himself, which is great. That's a great
and even helps him was super awkward. I mentioned kind of his ex Sunny, and like basically she works at the pharmacist, so it means that Harold has to keep repeatedly going back and getting different drugs, and like you can tell that he would normally try and avoid the pharmacist, but he hasn't got a choice to now. And so you go, and at first he's very awkward, and she'll be like, "Oh, like what have you been up to?" And he's like, "Oh, nothing." And then eventually you can see that because he has to keep talking to her, and because his confidence is kind of growing, and he's got like this new purpose, he's thinking of kind of someone other than himself. Like eventually they kind of end up on good terms and kind of friends again, and having like natural like dialogue.
Yeah, it's great. Do you feel like the game had a lot of, maybe the Moreau appearing to be villainous to start with, I feel like the game had a lot of plot threads that I thought were going somewhere, and then they kind of just didn't? Yeah,
because there was kind of that with Allwater, that company. Like I really kept thinking, because they're not set up as being good, like they're set up as being like problematic, but like in the way that trains are in the UK, as in they're just badly run and exploit you, like that's the way it felt. Like I thought like they were setting up for that to be more outright evil. I'm kind of glad it wasn't, because that would have been the obvious thing to do.
There was the basically there's this part where Harold's leaving the alien planet for the first time, and the alien companion, says to him like, "Oh, what do you think the others will think of this planet?" He goes, the others. And I was like, oh no, they're gonna like destroy this planet to get the energy and like just start thinking about themselves. And then Bridget comes down, and she's like, "Oh, I can't wait for the power." And she's like, "Oh no, I mean the energy." And I was like really rallying behind the alien planet, like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do what's right and save this alien planet." Nothing really comes from that.
No, I thought they were going to
just dies down.
I thought they were going to do like an Avatar thing, especially because like the film's Avatar, where it's like the humans come, like the Na'vi instead of what they're called the Flimmelin. Is what the fish people are called. I thought they're going to do that, especially because you're keeping it secret. Yeah. And then like Harold comes in and he's talking to Monroe saying, "Oh my God, I've like went to this place and it's all amazing and stuff." And then they turn around and like the Allwater employees there, and it's like, "Oh exactly, no, yes. They're going to build their infrastructure and they're going to ruin it." But it's like, no, actually the humans get along really well with them, and they share their cultures back and forth. And you see like there's human musicians like playing with the Flimmelins version of music and stuff. So
it's nice though. It's all nice.
Yeah, because the bit when Harold first goes there, like apart from it being interesting seeing in new locations, that was actually one of my least favorite moments.
Really? Oh, it was amazing. What an amazing alien planet. Like, so many original ideas there.
It was cool to see, and it was cool to see like the stuff where it's like, this is their version of a library, and it's like this gel you rub and then sit in a bath. And so like, I enjoyed that stuff, was cool, and it was cool visually seeing it. But the dialogue there, I think it got a little bit too on the nose. I wouldn't say like preachy, but it was very much like, oh, well, humans have money. It's like, well, why do you have money? We don't need money because we're all good and kind. It's like, oh, well, on humans, like, we do this. Like, why don't you do this? Like, well, you don't have to do like, and I thought like they went a little bit too hard like that. And it didn't feel like a natural conversation between those two characters. And it felt like that was the dialogue that made sense so the writers could make their point. It felt like quite back to back several times.
And they also did the thing where, so you and Wii U have a translation earpiece. But obviously only Harold has one and Wii U has one. So when he speaks to another alien, they don't understand each other. And they also do that like 5 times. And it's like, I know he doesn't understand them. Like, he doesn't have an earpiece.
And they were kind of doing it as a joke every time. It's the same joke. Yeah. I will mention that I really like Wii U. I really like Wii U's voice actor.
Same.
Was rich and just like such a nice, just positive, like up for it character. And there's another few like I still feels quite cool. There's another few plot points that you think it's going somewhere but doesn't, is like almost like a jealousy with Harold, because Harold kind of had Wii U all to himself.
Yeah.
And then they get to a point where like he goes like, oh yeah, me and Wii U will go and do that. And Wii U was like, oh, actually I'm a bit busy. And he's like, oh, you're like not
but
then it's never mentioned again. And then after that they're together. And so it's, in one way it feels like, oh, they were gonna do a plot point but didn't. But in another way it's like, oh no, that's just the way, a little bit more natural, is things don't always tie up with a resolution.
No, that's true of a lot of the plot points, I suppose. Like a lot of them don't. And I guess that's fine, because that's what they've obviously chosen to do. There's also the evil CEO, well, evil in inverted commas, turns out she's not that evil, taking time from everyone. So they have this plot through the game, trying to explain as the best I can, where every time there's daylight savings, she's actually taken off another half an hour. And because everyone in all the clocks in the base are run by the company, they can put the clocks to whatever time they want. So people weren't realizing they were losing time. And then this meant that they were rushing to hit a deadline so they could leave the planet that never existed because they were so far in the past. And then when they kind of confront her about it, they're just like, oh, okay. And then nothing really happens. And then the guy, one of the bad guys, probably the main antagonist really, is this guy called Schlitmeyer. And he freezes the whole ship and all this water around the ship and really just destroys it so he can make a ski slope, which is like came out of nowhere. And it's like, okay, so there's going
to be a test at the end, everyone. I hope you're paying attention.
So I was like, okay, they're going to like fire him into space or something. And he just make him pick up rubbish. And it's like, he almost doomed all of you, like for his own gain, no one else's gain. It was personal gain. A lot of those things were just like, I want some justice to come
I think that's like I think it's the very, I'm trying to not sound too negative here because I don't think it's a bad thing. It's a very like light game.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Well, no, I don't think it is, because towards the end,
I guess like
it really gets to you.
But I guess that's why I was trying to be careful with my wording. That's probably bad wording. But like in terms of like the culture of the characters is like, there's not really any ever like raised voices. And then like there's one moment of violence from Chris and he's like immediately regrets it and is sad about it and apologizes. Like it's very like it's a very like civilized culture. And like I guess there's a little bit, maybe because it's back from like the 70s where there was a little bit more maybe uptightness and like formalness to it. And so I think that like it's kind of in fitting with that reasoning. And like it's all a bit like unrealistic. Like the fact that they like go and find these alien creatures and they're immediately just like, oh, and how will we talk to them? There's no like, what? There's aliens? Like everyone's just like, okay, and like this is our life now.
Well, I suppose
but lunch is at 12, remember?
I suppose they are surrounded by alien fish all the time.
Yeah.
You always see them swimming around. Then finding one that is human shaped is a bit more like,
no, just like literally like 5 minutes around the corner there's a cave of this whole other civilization.
True.
So yeah, like I don't like, I thought that was fine. It is a bit weird that like reveal of the villain, because they do the thing where they show like a montage of all of the times that he was like evil leading up to it. But I feel like none of the examples that they give are him being like particularly evil or like it always is making out as if like, oh, if you listen carefully what he said, he was actually like, he was alluding to his plot the whole time. But I feel like they didn't want to commit to it enough. They were too scared people would actually work it out beforehand.
There's a bit they show in the montage where he just moves a pipe. I was like, what's he even doing? He's just like,
it's like no one would have any chance to like work it out from the clues that you show. But like the way they present it was really like, and now we're gonna peel back the curtain, and he was obviously evil all along. You didn't notice it.
Yeah. What do you think of the what do you think of like the whole last third? So Harold goes. So obviously spoilers. We spoiled loads of the game. But Harold goes into a dangerous environment that is potentially lethal, and his helmet breaks, and we use helmet breaks at the same time. And then the next scene, you're like sitting in like a waiting room, and him and Wii U are speaking without the translators, and I was like, oh no, he's dead. I was like, he's literally dead. And then you walk up to the filtration tank because you like kind of go into his head or something, and then you see him like a body in the filtration tank, and I was literally said out loud like, I can't take this. I can't take this. And it didn't turn out that he wasn't dead, but I was like, for a second, I was like, if he sees himself floating in that filtration tank, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, it was so, like, that last section is so poignant and like really pulls on your heartstrings. It was like, I don't know, I thought it was a really amazing artistic finale.
They did set up that basically it was they're going down like this well. And they did a test with some fish, and one of the fish was protected by this bubble. The other one wasn't, and the one that wasn't, they were like, "Oh, it's dead." Oh no, it's not dead. It's just unconscious. So like, I feel like they did set up that if they didn't have their helmet, they wouldn't be okay. They wouldn't die. But they might. But who knows what would happen to them? So I never I just didn't think this was the sort of game to kill the main character. I didn't get that vibe with it, so I never really expected that he would have died. Yeah,
there was two parts. I thought he died then, and then I thought the part where the rocket takes off at the end, flies out the water, and it has a slight delay, and then it takes off. When it had a slight delay, I was like, oh no, it's going to explode. And that's how it's going to end. Because obviously...
You're a fretter, aren't you?
I'm like Harold. I'm a warrior.
Did you know Ollie's 22?
I've had a hard life. Very, very hard life. But yeah, that ending section, like climbing up the staircases of stars, like up to the different rooms that are floating around. Like, there is also a section earlier on in the game that's also a bit like that when you're throwing boxes into your room, and it rotates to the side.
Forgot about
the boxes just fall in, which is cool.
Yeah, because it's funny at first when they're like, "Oh, I'm going to move all of the boxes," and they make you do the first few manually, and he like goes. It's like this big pile of boxes. He picks up the smallest box. I'm like, they wouldn't they wouldn't make me do all these boxes.
Yeah, do you know what? I did think they would. I really did think they would.
Yeah, I'm glad they did that kind of thing. Yeah, those dream sequences are really cool. I did have a few bugs through the game, and
I had one then.
Did you have one when you were trying to get into your bed?
Yeah, I was just stuck walking, and then in the next screen, it just crashed.
Oh, I didn't get the crash. I had it walking to get into the bed for ages, the point where I was about to quit and reload the game, but it worked. But then happened next time as well.
Oh, okay.
So and it didn't ruin the sequence for me, but like it must have lost a bit of impact because I'm now thinking like, oh, the video game's not running well, rather than like, oh my god, here's a giant version of the CEO or whatever other crazy visual they were showing.
The hard crash for me was before when the screen splits and you're half Wii U, half Harold. So when I loaded back in, I was at that point. But like, I was so invested at that point that I was.
Yeah. But then throughout, I had a few like there's quite a few just kind of visual glitches and things like the walking speed. Like when you walk, it doesn't line up with the animation.
Right.
So and it's okay when you're sprinting, but if you're just walking, you see like their feet are sliding.
Yeah.
I had a moment where I was meant to. So there's a whole thing where I know we said spoilers. I won't go too much into it, but there's a whole thing about where you can deliver letters, and you can deliver letters to people. And I couldn't deliver I had to deliver a letter to person, and I just didn't have an option to speak to them. And I had that in my mission. Yeah. And so because I couldn't deliver the letter to them, I then couldn't deliver letters to anyone else. So I had a few, like, not just visual bugs, but actual kind of gameplay impeding bugs as well.
I either missed that mission or it didn't load for me, the letters one.
Did you do anything to do with the letters?
I did the running around with the postie.
Did you ever speak to him in his post office?
No.
Oh, okay. So basically,
I did do quite a lot of side stuff though. I didn't just run past it.
Oh, no,
I just missed that one.
No. I'll explain that because it's actually kind of one of the cool moments. So basically, you go and speak to the postman, and he's basically, it's a bit contrived, the reasoning, but basically he's got a big pile of undelivered letters that he's not allowed to read because of privacy things, because while he's working. But if when he's finished working, you read it, he can listen, and it's all these undelivered. So it's basically these letters from years ago.
Okay, I see.
So you go through and you hear all of these little stories from people that used to live on the Fedora ages ago.
Yeah.
And like it plays with like nice music and stuff. So that's like a really cool moment. And once you've done all of them, you can then carry on delivering these letters to people, but they're all like old letters. But I never got to see much of that, as I said, because I got this bug.
Maybe I never got the letters because I never did that. So basically, I did what I normally do, where I have a chapter. I look at the chapters of a walkthrough, and then I saw the one above was like, "Oh, deliver the letters." And I was like, "What? I didn't do that." And then I realised I must have missed it.
I realised I've missed it because I saw it in a clip of a video for it, and you mentioned it as well. Is I never went to like the residential bit, like where people's houses are.
Oh, really?
Like it never tells you to go there, right? Do you just?
Yeah, you do. That's where the school is.
Oh, is it if you go past the school?
Yeah. It's not like houses. It's like apartments. Like
because I just saw like they're almost like little pods, almost like where people live, and so. But I don't think it ever tells you to go down there.
No, there's also I think that was maybe I did go down there, but there's like one that's like a candle in the tube station. I don't ever remember going in that one.
That was the one where when they had the funeral, they used that to send their like ashes out.
Oh.
So I think that's why it's a candle.
Ah, I see. Okay, cool.
Then there's another one which is just like the VIP one.
Yeah, which is the CEO's office and the pilot desk, right?
Yeah. And there's also like one of my favorite parts of the set design is there's the captain. The guy looks like he's wearing oven mitts all the time with the crazy hair.
Pointed hair, yeah.
So, like, did you go in his office? I'm assuming you must have.
Yeah, I did.
Like, his office is when you go up in an elevator, and then his chair that he's sitting on just raises up, and then but like not his desk or just him on his chair. And I was just like
so practical.
Yeah,
isn't it?
And that's a good example for like this is a game that isn't like it's not trying to ever be cool. It's fine to be like the fact that like the fish people are what they call like flumalum, and like the characters called Wii U, and all the character designs of the aliens are so silly. Like I have a lot of respect for something that just doesn't care about seeming cool, because that's something that I always think for like even just for people. I'm like, if there's someone I can just tell they're trying to like they really care about seeming cool, I'm like, why? Life's too short. Like I love being the fool, and this game's fine to like play the fool. Just like it's not trying to be edgy, you know. It's.
But I think some of the moments with the needle drops, the music comes in. They are trying to do, because towards the end there's a song when you walk back to the ship as Harold, obviously as Harold in third person. It plays a song called, I think it's called Time Slows Down. Time Moves Slow by Bad Bad Not Good. And that song is really famous. Like, as in it was in the charts like last year. So I was really surprised to hear that come in. And it did make me think like, oh, they're like trying to do something here.
Yeah, when I say no, I'm not saying like they're not trying to say a message or like I think that's different from being cool.
I thought it was quite a cool moment when he walks back there, when he like says bye to the aliens. He's
but if a game's trying to be like, I think a game like if it cared overall about being cool, it wouldn't have called the aliens flumalums, and they used their snibble floops on their blibbly boos. Like as a package, like that's not like what it's trying to be. Like whereas you think of, I don't know, like a game like Killer 7, like that's number one priority is be cool. Like that's
what game that is as well.
Exactly.
It's so cool.
And I never thought I'd compare Harold Halibut to Killer 7, but only on the bonus points will those comparisons be made.
Right. Have you got anything else? I've got some questions here.
Let me just check for I made a few notes of like moments, so I just want to make sure I didn't miss any. Reading the letters.
Presentations for the launch was really good. They show Cyrus's, and it's like just like unintelligible graphs and stuff. And then they show the other guy, Schlipminer's, and his was like this crazy like 80s vaporwave like thing where he's like a little 3D model. Like all those things were really cool. Whenever they showed like computer screens, they always look really good.
And that's a good one. But one other just question for you is, did the magic shop ever open for you, or did I miss something? Like in the arcade, there's like that weird magic and like potion shop.
No, it didn't. And I tried to get it to do something because it's got a spiral in front of it. So I stood in front of the spiral and zoomed in to see if I could but it couldn't get to do anything. So no.
Yeah, that is one of the things of the game is I do wish, even if it's not solving puzzles, I do wish the game was a little bit more interactable. Like there was a little bit, maybe it's just difficult with the way they did the game, but like even more things just moving in the environment, or you could like, there's like this, one of those like kind of spinning doors that you can go through, and that like really stands out because it's it's a thing you can interact with, and you can. So if someone's walking through it, you can go the other way and block them as well.
Which is know that.
It's quite good. I mean,
there's like
glitchy,
there's a corridor with a bucket in it, and I kind of wish you could kick the bucket.
Yeah, or just knock things in the world. Like if there's something that like. Imagine like those like hanging beads in a doorway and you walk through, especially if they're doing 70s, like that would have been a slam dunk, but maybe that was a little bit difficult to do with the technology. I don't know.
You just reminded me of one more thing that's definitely worth shouting out because it's a really cool feature was Harold's notebook. Yes, his little sketches. He draws the events of the game as they happen, and it's kind of insinuated, kind of referenced a bit later on that he can't read very well, so it kind of makes sense that he would have these drawings in his book, and the drawings are really good, and you can go back and look at them at any time. There's one of him sticking the fork in the when he gets electrocuted, and in the drawing he's got his leg like over his head, and then he's got the picture of the other guy with him like laughing at him. Like it's so good.
It's funny because there's a little pop up when there's a new one like no added.
Yes,
and sometimes there'll be like a really funny scene will happen, and it'll be like no added. I'm like yes, like that's like I'm glad to. I want to see like the little sketch of like that weird moment.
Did you see the one of Wii U with the shoe on it on his head, her head?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at all of those, so yeah, I would.
Good little smile with a shoe on her head, and I was literally like, "That's the best thing I've ever seen." It's so funny. Anyway, questions. This is a good one. AV7903 on YouTube. What did you think of the ending of the game? I found it to be a bit abrupt. I kind of wish there was a montage to show you what happened in the last 100 days. So that's something we didn't actually cover. Is the game takes place over like 90 days. But you get quite big sections of it skipped with like montages. I feel like they could have been another montage. There wasn't too many, but obviously it's a lot of work for them. It needed me to say that, but I don't feel like there was so many.
The Wii U montage was great. They're like silly, like when like she first. Or they first wake up, and like it's just them like sneaking around and being like high-fiving and stuff. Like that's another good example of the game not trying to be cool. Like,
true. Or the montage of Wii U's unwell and Harold's going back to speak to them, and then it shows all these clips of him sitting on the side of the bed, and then one of the clips Wii U's on the chair, like basically dead, and Harold's laying in the bed like talking. It's so funny.
Those are great. But I will like a lot of those were. I don't know if they're pre-rendered or just playing videos. There's a lot of the times when it would do a cutscene like that, like it just looked like everything looked more solid. Like it's like you could tell like there was a few scenes where there was one bit at the end where it's like Harold and Wii U in like the submarine, and it was like what I assume was either just like a video or like some way they'd baked it in because there's no player control, and it's like, oh, that looks lovely, and it's like the game looks amazing anyway, but it always feels like maybe appropriately like it's just about to break. It's I
didn't think the ending was. Maybe it was a bit abrupt, but I think the ending is so strong that I didn't mind. Like that final shot of Harold and Wii U in the little submarine. Yeah, I was like, that's a perfect ending.
Yeah, I think that's the shot. I think that was the shot I was talking about just then.
Yeah, they couldn't have ended it any other way. Like, and the fact that the people on the ship or the ones that he speaks to are happy for him to leave is like that is such a different way of the first time he goes to leave because he's like, I'm the only one that can leave with no one noticing, and then the second time when he tells everyone he's leaving, they're like, do you know what? Good for you. Like, go and live your life. Yeah, great. Really, really strong ending. Really great story.
I think maybe the bit they're talking about is there's a bit between when they confront Slippy and Chris's punches him, and then they realize that they have more time,
100 more days. Yeah,
and then it goes straight to like, and now we're going to leave. Like, I think that's the bit that maybe there's the jump rather than the actual ending.
Oh no, of course, yeah, of course. But I think that the ending is so strong, I didn't even notice. That I was like, it's fine to skip that 100 days. Yeah, a montage would have been nice, but. Well, I'm fine. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement. Like, a montage would have helped, but like, it didn't really stand out to me until you pointed out.
Blay17 has asked who our favourite characters are, which we've kind of covered off. Is there anyone else you'd like to add?
No.
No, me neither. Well, I liked Chris, so there you go. Chris Tenenbaum. And also, another plot point that kind of doesn't really go anywhere, but I did really like was the lighthouse keepers all turning out to be a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
And you go and hang out with them, and that's the point where it starts to feel like Fantastic Mr. Fox. Like, you're scheming with them, but then that whole scheme comes to nothing, right? Because then the CEO gets in front of it and makes an announcement to the ship being like, oh yeah, we did change the time, but...
No, it does matter because that's how Harold knows about that time thing, which comes into play later on. Yeah, but in that moment it feels a bit flat, but that's how they find it out. But I did enjoy that. Like, I mean, talking about being cool, like, the kids are the coolest characters in it. Like some of their designs and like their outfits and stuff. They're like an interesting group. I like the fact there was like the younger girl with them,
like a toddler with them.
Yeah, who's just like going along with it all and stuff. Yeah. Like I quite enjoyed that. It was quite funny. Then the rest are like mostly teenagers.
Yeah. Right. Shall we list it?
Put on the list.
Did you know we have a Patreon? Maybe you're unsure what that is.
Patreon allows you to support us directly, and in return you get exclusive stuff. Access to our Discord server, behind-the-scenes content, and an exclusive podcast series.
Your support means we can up our production and continue making fun videos. You can join us at patreon.com/the bonus points. And it has a free trial too.
Woohoo!
A couple of weeks ago, sitting in this very room, I asked you if Dredge was the best fish game that has ever been out. I think for sure, this is a better fish game.
Yeah, I did enjoy it more than Dredge. You did. To be fair, I haven't researched heavily fish games. You were like, "What's your favorite fish game?" And I was like, "Well, that's my brain's never had to answer that question before. I wasn't prepared."
But at least on the list.
Yeah. Well, where's Dredge?
49. 49.
Yeah. So that's very low, isn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of good games on here, mate.
It is a lot of good games. Yeah, that's just like that. Because I feel like, 49, that must be a bad game, but it's like 40. I think kind of 50 down is. No, even then again, we got
beginner's guide's 53.
Yeah, where do the bad games start? Is there a line?
I'd say probably World of Warcraft.
As in, you don't like World of Warcraft, the first bad one?
Would be like the first one that I wouldn't want to play again.
Yeah, that's true.
And if from there downwards are all like, oh yeah, let's never play these again.
Yeah. But obviously, World of Warcraft is, 100 million people can't be wrong. I'm sure there's value there.
How about this? What if they are? Have you thought about that? What if they are wrong?
No, good point. Right.
I thought about that.
Let's continue adding to the definitive list of truth.
Yeah. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Right. Harold Halibut. So, opening couple of hours, savage. I thought I was going to hate this game. Towards the end of the game, I was almost shedding a tear for our boy Harold. He's now my boy. He's officially my boy.
Yeah.
So I think this... What's another close analogue? Maybe... It's not really a point-and-click game. Probably the closest analogue probably is Frog Detective.
Yeah, but it's just such a tonal difference. I mean, obviously we got the dig, but that's kind of...
Much more puzzle-based.
Yeah, we've actually not got a huge amount of story-based games overall, really looking at them.
Yeah, Edith Finch?
Yeah, I think Edith Finch may be actually the closest comparison we have.
Mm.
And so Edith Finch is currently sitting at 25. Would you put this above or below 25?
I would put it above Edith Finch, yes. I think the next one that I would hit on and be like, this is trouble, is Walking Dead.
Oh, wow. So above Killer 7, Outer Worlds?
Oh, no, sorry. I mean, it's story-based. Story-based.
Okay.
Sorry. Story-based game. So I would be between the two story-based games is what I'm saying. Is like, that's the top end and Edith Finch is the bottom end.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it over Harold. So let's just put where it would go on the list, not just comparing story games.
Yeah.
So you would put it above 25, but obviously under 15. So we're within that span of 10 games.
I mean, I think Killer 7 is way too low.
It'd be funny if it's next to Killer 7 after me talking earlier about comparing it to Killer 7.
Ignoring Killer 7, I would put it above Outer Wilds. I'd put it above Subterra. I'd put it above Yoshi's Island. I'd put it above Pikmin. I'd probably put it 18, 19, not above Like a Dragon. Like a Dragon, similar pacing problem. And similar main character. Except Ichiban's got that edge that Harold doesn't have. But Ichiban's very nice to everyone. But he's also like, if I don't need to be nice, I can.
Ichiban's like very confident.
Yeah, exactly. He's like they're very similar
and
outlooks.
Like capable.
Yeah. Whereas Harold is like, they're both very kind, but Harold is like, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Whereas Ichiban's like, I can literally beat up 1,000 people and smile through the whole thing.
Okay, so I'm in the same general area as well. I was expecting to be fighting you to get this one higher because I was thinking this was more of a me game than a you game, but
I agree. I think you're right, but the moments and the story is so poignant that it's like you'd have to be heartless to not have it hit you in a certain way.
Yeah, reviewers. Any writers from Edge watching this?
Did they give it again a 4 or a 5?
I think it was a 5. So I've not read their review, and so I'm sure this is I think this is a game you could definitely play and be like, I don't like this. Like I don't like the writing, the characters, or it's slow or whatever. But I remember we chose to do this game. And the first review to come out was Edge. It was the only review, and it got a 5.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit like, okay, obviously we're going to still do it and we're going to base it on our own opinions, but the only review got a 5, but then the other reviews came out and they were like 8s and 9s and 7s and so we're like, okay.
I would say it had very divisive. It's either like most outlets are either giving it like a 5 or a 9.
Yeah.
It's kind of going either way. So yeah, I think so. I've currently put it between 18 and 19, I guess. So it will become the new 19.
I would want it. I think I preferred Outer Wilds.
Okay.
Which is at 23. And Subterra, the board game, I could go either way on because it's like I don't even want to go down that conversation.
If Outer Wilds is your the highest level, we don't need to worry about Subterra.
Yeah, but obviously if you want to, I don't know if you're going to try and push it above Outer Wilds is what I'm saying.
Well, I think maybe as a little protest, because I think Killer 7's too low, it could go one below Killer 7 and take over What Remains of Edith Finch for 25.
Okay, so Harold Halibut would be at 25.
At 25.
Killer 7 stays at 24.
Yeah.
And then Edith Finch moves down to 26.
26.
Okay. I do like the fact that we're directly comparing Harold Halibut and Killer 7. Yeah. The fact that those naturally came up in the podcast, the fact that they're ending up next to each other is silly. And as I made clear, I like being silly. So that's perfect for me. Yeah.
So are you happy with it being the new 25? I thought you'd put it higher. For what we're doing.
No, as the kind of point we just made is just like this is a list full of really, really great games. And so I think there's just, top 25 out of 63 or 64 games now on the list. We've got a full Minecraft stack of games here, and it's in the top 25. I think that is not a mean feat. I will say, in an alternate version, they made this game and it was a point and click adventure game with some good, even if it was lighter puzzles, but still some put some thought into the gameplay as well. That version, that might be trying to get in one in, one out to the top 10. It's trying to get in. But that game doesn't exist, and it would have to exist. And then the puzzles aren't rubbish, which is one of the problems with point and click adventure games. They often are.
Do you know what I've been trying to form a thought about this game, and I haven't quite managed to get there. Maybe you can help me get there. But people are like, "Oh, this game would be better as a film." I don't think this would be better as a film, despite the fact that it's so filmic and the interaction is so minimal. I think the way they've done it is the only way it can be. Obviously, adding more, but the way they've done it, with you running around, is the only way that really hits home all the points of the story.
Yeah, I think it would be better as not better than a game, but better as a TV show than it would be a film. Yeah, I think TV shows set up for single locations, big locations, and obviously the aliens thing. But you could imagine coming back, or even episodes of a game, like the classic Telltale style.
Yeah.
You could imagine them being released every few months, and you kind of are doing your chores, but there's always a new story in the fedora, and like some of the like moments that happen in this game is like, oh, they want to redesign their shop because and they think that their wife is cheating on them or something. Like that's the storyline of that episode. And then they're still telling an overarching storyline over like 6 episodes or something, but there's a self-contained story all in the fedora, and every episode there's like a little new bit of the fedora you can go to. Like I feel like that format could have worked.
Do you think it would be better? Not a game.
I think it might have actually helped some of your pacing concerns.
Yeah, I mean, the opening couple of hours. But, I mean, weigh that up with the fact that I was running around an alien planet.
Yeah.
Is really powerful.
But I feel like if it was like, oh, we're going to do a 2-hour episode.
Yeah.
The first episode couldn't just be the first 2 hours of the game. There would need to be more story or character development.
It's a bit like the Last of Us TV show, right? Like you can't have them running around like picking up bullets. Do you know what I mean? Like,
but this is just splitting up a game to be a game. Is they would have to change it. So they would have to be more like every 2 hours there'd have to be like a little moment and a conclusion and an impact and then a reset and then another moment and an impact.
The music drops are almost like credit sequences.
Yeah.
So it kind of is like that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I think about when they made it. I don't know.
Maybe if they were to do one another again, considering it took them like 8 years, whatever, to make it, maybe they'd consider doing that.
Maybe it didn't take the full amount of time to make it. Maybe because they're doing the stop motion and then they switched halfway through. Maybe if they just stuck to their new technique, maybe it'll be a bit quicker.
Yeah, slow bros. As I said, lazy. It's just fun. It's so funny because I always think when I see like critics that are like really negative or people that's like someone's made a thing and like someone does a comment just saying like cringe or like this is worse, and it's like. Dude, like you couldn't do that. Like people that are like sitting there just critique. I know it's like a bit ironic what we're doing here, but like people that are just like complaining about things. It's like they made something. They took a chance and they did something. Like in this case, it was a success. But like that's and when I'm kind of doing that as like a joke. That's me like mimicking people that are actually kind of like that. Like I've had years of people being like, oh, like Minecraft developers are so lazy because like their updates are so slow because of mods and stuff. Like people that have no idea what's going on behind the scenes and stuff. It's just like, it's like, well, you make it then, you know?
Yeah.
It's
God,
like,
have you gone woke? The bonus points goes woke.
I've gone angry.
You've got angry.
Yeah.
This game started in the dude's kitchen. He started it in his kitchen, unfunded. Then he did a Kickstarter, and it failed. And the game still came out. So good on him.
Yeah, no, it's super impressive. Like that's why I was making those jokes, is because it's so ludicrous to suggest that this wasn't just like an amazing, like talented team, like pouring their heart and soul into doing a project that has no right to exist and get released. Like it's amazing. So at number 25.
At number 25.
Number 25 on the list.
Underneath a game that doesn't even use an analog stick. It's good. I loved it. 2 thumbs up from me.
Yeah, no, I was a little bit scared about picking it for I chose it because I knew I was going to play this game. Like I was going to play it no matter what.
I was going to play it.
So yeah, I was a little bit worried about whether it would be a good podcast game. And I think it has been. So hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. But that is it for Harold Halibut Talk. So let's turn our attention to some future games we're going to be doing on the podcast.
Yeah, so next time we're doing Zone of the Enders 2, which I believe, I was just looking at the list, as our first Konami game we're doing. Isn't that crazy? We got to 64 without doing a single Konami game?
Yeah, well, we've done a lot of modern games, and they haven't really been doing many games. Yeah, my eyes went to Death Stranding. There's probably the closest to a Konami game we've made, but obviously not quite.
And then, little bit of trivia for you, for people who are still watching, we're doing Hideo Kojima's favourite game, Pokemon Gold and Silver.
Is that his favourite game?
It's his favourite game.
There's been a bit of a change for Pokemon Gold and Silver, which you don't know about. It's not the other thing. It's originally we agreed that I was going to play Gold
and I was going to play Silver,
and you were going to play Silver. Can we switch?
No. Yeah,
I didn't know if you like started it all or whatever.
No, I haven't started yet.
So it's just because I got it here.
Hey,
I got my
nice.
Pokemon Gold, and I tested it today because I wanted to make sure the battery worked, because they have batteries in to save.
Yeah.
And I got this off eBay, and they said it had a good battery, but it's dead. It can't save.
Let's have a look at it though.
So.
Oh, it's cool, isn't it?
It's still cool. So I still got like a little Pokemon collection, so it's fine. But like, I am not like you got to like use a soldering iron and stuff to change the battery. I'm not going to do that. So I have ordered, because I didn't have silver for my collection anyway. I've ordered silver with apparently a working battery. So I want to play silver then, and then you play gold.
No worries.
Little switch.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, Pokemon Gold and Silver, 28th of June, and then Skate on the 12th of July with a guest, and then nothing announced after that.
Okay, cool. So those are the games we got coming up. Anything else going on in Bonus Points Land?
I think the Inverted Eyes video is out.
Is that? Oh, good.
So a little bit behind the scenes, we're recording this almost a week earlier than we normally do. So this isn't coming out for 2 weeks in the future, which means the Inverted Eyes video is out. What a great treat that is for everyone that's not seen it. Joe, for some reason, owns a pair of glasses that flip your eyes.
I sleep in them.
He sleeps in them.
Yeah, helps me
Because you
sleep.
lay up like a bat.
Yeah.
You would have had to see the room the right way up.
You know, in the morning, it's sometimes difficult to get out of bed. She's like, oh, I've got to get up. I feel like I'm falling out of bed. I spring out.
You feel like you're getting down.
It's like I'm like brushing my teeth or just like rubbing toothpaste in my hair. Like, it's kind of like, oh my god, imagine that. Like that's like a more extreme YouTuber than us is like a day wearing them. Like imagine
Maybe that's part 2. I'd literally be sick.
Go for a drive.
I would be sick. Go for a drive.
Go on the bikes.
Anyway, if you haven't seen it, you'll wonder what we're laughing at. But definitely go and check that video out because it's a lot of fun.
So we got that kind. And then there's another kind of I say one-off, our version of a one-off live action video we got coming up soon as well. And then also, probably by the time you're watching this, I won't say what yet. There's probably been some news announced about kind of just what I've been up to this year. If you are curious to hear more about that, we'll probably be talking about that on Extra Credit, which is our Patreon exclusive podcast. So if you're interested in that and want to see kind of the other benefits you get from Patreon, there'll be a link down below if you are curious about how all of that works.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's everything.
Yeah. Oh, and also
it's not.
Animal Well, a little bit of spoilers for Extra Credit. I loved Animal Well. I'm going to talk about Animal Well a lot as well in that
awesome.
podcast as well. Because
Wow.
so if you're an Animal Well fan, that's the best place to hear about that as well.
Sweet. God, nice one. But that is it then. That is everything.
Okay, cool. So thanks so much for watching or listening to this podcast, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for Zone of the Enders 2. Bye!
Bye.